So I think we just have to figure that out.
Good evening.
Hey there, how are you?
Going?
Yeah, okay, well,
Yeah, so I mean, I think
any of
it's,
those dates
should work. I
that
mean, I
are-
think, and as long as we have a forum, it doesn't even have to have 9 or 8, I guess 8 of us. But I'm assuming we don't see Eric back again.
well, yeah, I think he's on the next group, so that Peter probably is in the search for someone for his replacement.
Yeah, so one of the things that will happen at the November council meeting is they'll go into exec session and they'll see if they can appoint somebody to take his spot here. So
Shouldn't
that
be too
person,
hard.
no,
You know, actually, Peter's crowd should have a pipeline.
well, they
of
do have applications.
People.
They
Yeah,
do.
that kind of,
They do.
the minute something opens up.
Well, it's hard because it has to go by council, so it's
Yeah.
whenever the next council
Right, I
meeting
get
is.
that part, but
And,
Gary, how are you?
somebody, well,
scratching their heads wondering what
Special
who
meeting.
I'm gonna put on.
well, here's what happens. Sometimes you get a whole bunch of people that apply over time, but they apply and there's one application for all the councils and boards, and they ask you like, what's your
Questions.
what's your first choice, what's your second choice, what's your third choice? So if the only applications they have that are active, because some people hold them or are appointed somewhere, you know, if the only ones that are active have planning as like their third choice, then, you know, sometimes they'll say like, is that really the right person?
Yeah.
And so they may try to find other people to apply
Sure.
because they want
Right.
people that are really interested,
I
you
get
know?
that too, yeah.
So, perfect. We would never get that soon anyway. And then we don't want to avoid Thanksgiving week, obviously. So.
No,
Yeah.
Peter usually brings it. Gary, I thought you weren't gonna be here,
Why did you think that?
cause you emailed me and told me you weren't gonna be here, like 2
I
months
did
ago.
my recertification.
Oh yeah, so did I. I sent it to
Yeah,
you.
because you were asking about your absences.
Oh, I asked about my absence.
Cause you said you weren't gonna be
He
here.
just
in
wanted to know.
October.
Sound
He
like my
just wanted to
16-year-old daughter.
I didn't even apply.
Yeah.
How many times gotta be absent? I didn't even apply, I wasn't gonna be here, I was just asking.
What's the minimum, huh?
Like,
Yeah.
hypothetically, if I weren't here, would I be in trouble?
No, I'm here.
I mean, I'm glad you're here.
No.
I'm just surprised when I walked in, I was like,
We've laughed so much already. We've only been here for 10 minutes. I swear, it's hysterical. Oh my God, I'm gonna be punchy by the time we start. So I did give these guys just these 3 before everybody else came. Oh, thank you.
Problem is, like getting here, I leave my house at 4 o'clock. Sometimes I get here by 5, sometimes I get here by 4:30. Far east. You can't get any further in Mount Pleasant.
I was gonna say, I think you're on the line.
Actually, so when we bought the property, bought the house, we were in one of the dorms. So I arranged that. I have no choice to stay in the dorm home next to Mount Pleasant.
For your individual property.
I mean,
For your individual property.
but yeah, see the way it works. If an individual property is adjacent,
Yeah.
and so my property was adjacent to, it was adjacent to actually Mount Pleasant and Allen West. And so I had my choice to, either do things new or become part of Allen Dar or become part of West.
I didn't hear about it.
I also did, well, I've been in Allen West. Planning commission.
I was gonna say, 'cause that used to be all golf.
I talked to Mr. Rice, so Rice wants to come out.
I served,
He actually are not West also.
Fort Charleston Foundation. For their spring tour.
And I could walk in Allen West.
Yeah.
Actually, my post office is to the Fort Knox, to the 49. So my driver's license is Hollis.
Right.
Voters registration card said Mount Pleasant.
2 or 3 lakes.
Okay.
And their job really is to fundraise, so not
There's a few of us that have those 2 nights.
Right.
They sent me a message.
I had
Just so you can make sure.
We're worried about my condo right now. It's right on the beach. That's your house on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it won't be
I'm on a
next year.
sand dune
Separate
at
the
the waterway.
so people don't feel
my
like
house sits on
safe
Right.
houses. So what is
You're fortunate.
Yeah.
We used to have a big board walk out to the ocean. Walking out of the, with all these roads we had out there. It goes out to the other day. It's the condo. So high, full moon and high tide. Water.
Yeah.
Keep putting down sand. Sure.
Wow.
Now they want to assess us another more sand bags.
Did they have a house in the old Peter house? That was on tour, and I wrote 2 or 3 of them. 2 or 3 of them. It was 7 or 8 people.
This one
It was a
seems
full
relatively simple.
There's not a lot of
to walk around.
No, you don't. All of y'all. Thank you. When Alexa says, I can carry so much stuff. I feel like those, and my hands are free. Oh, don't patronize me. Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Some people use teams.
No. Yeah. We've had a tough stretch of Philly sports. How are you?
It's amazing what
Hanging in there. How are you guys? Oh, you printed out.
You know, I did just because I
Is that your subdivision?
I printed them from each girl. I can't take credit for that. Julie in my office did it.
We're like, I can't
I
see
emailed.
that.
I was like, "Do you want to print these for me for the meeting from now on?"
For me, another day, another fire to put out. Actually, I have this woman that works for me. I bought her a fireman's hat. It seems like, it seems like we're putting out fires.
Get one of those like
A
hose.
little fireman's cap, you know. We're putting out fires.
Oh, literal fires?
No. Work. This airplane's broken here, and this airplane's over there. The airplane can't see this broken.
Scary.
Yeah.
We have 8 jets in the house. Philadelphia, Kansas City, a couple of one's from Virginia, one's down here, and something's always broken. You know, it's just like
All the way up to.
Don't use that as your sales pitch.
Well, you're not trying. I'm not trying to sell you an airplane. If I was trying to sell you an airplane, I wouldn't do that.
You're not doing any like private flights.
Most of it's medical work, actually. We do organ.
Yeah. So that's
It's almost all organ work.
yeah. Other than the pilots, there's no.
So they're having to tell.
They've already yeah.
A joke
There's
in
no
there
additional
somewhere.
death.
Yeah, we're out every night for organ flights.
Then they have their farm home or whatever they want to do on weekends and summers.
We deal with the FAA. We deal with the FAA all the time. And that's now the FAA is on strike. Now on strike with the FAA offices are closed. So there's,
So what do you think of the little console stuff?
Oh, yeah.
I was surprised at that. I was a little surprised at that. I was like, because I thought there were, because when Mike would sit in our meetings, he would always have stuff written down and spread out everywhere. I never like felt like he was trying to home cook anything. That was odd, an odd exchange.
The old house, eggs and
I've seen it.
Pretty spicy. Pretty spicy.
It's very strong convictions.
Yeah, you're right.
You go tomorrow night. Another forum.
Is that a Mount? Hey, is that a Mount Pleasant one? Mount Pleasant paper. I'll go if Peter goes.
Chamber of Commerce tomorrow night.
Are you going? You're like, I don't get paid enough for that. I've got a. I've got a.
Another one. I did the legal women voters, but there was only 5 of them. I don't know how helpful it is.
How many people are running for town council?
Pritchard's had a shipyard.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. Ugh. Maybe pass a bottle of gummies, CoQ10 or something for Halloween. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to do it. So here we go.
Yep, I'm on. We'll call the October meeting of the Planning Commission to order. I think we've got a few absences. Lynette, I know that, at least I was told a little bit earlier, that Mr. Lacey has resigned, and maybe one or two other people. Emily, I don't see here.
We did hear from Mr. Berry. He said he would not be here.
Okay, good. Thanks for letting us know. But I think we do have a quorum, so we're ready to go. Okay, I'll ask for approval of the agenda, or a motion to pass the agenda.
I suppose.
Thanks,
Second.
Bill. There's a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And the same need a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
I so moved.
Thanks, Bill. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Davis. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Great. All right, we'll turn it over to staff for the Planning Commission recommendations update.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission. We have 3 items that have been ruled on by council since we've last met. 1124 Vinning Road, that was proposing AB2 zoning. That was denied at first reading, so that will terminate that application. Final reading for 1096 and 1076 Beehive Road to be zoned and annexed and zoned CC. That was approved. And final reading on the 11.85 acres off of Highway 17. The zoning was denied for CC, but the annexation was approved, so that will come in as RR, rural residential.
Okay, great.
That's all the staff has.
Thanks for that update. And I just want to confirm that all the correspondence that came in within the time limits was properly distributed.
Correct. I will say there are some indirect correspondence that I would like to refer you to. The town has been receiving fraudulent emails from people impersonating town staff, so wanted to make you aware of that. You can see here, this is from the Planning Commission at USA.com. So wanted to make people aware we're going to take action on our part to better protect the applicants, but there has been requests for wire transfers, so
Wow.
wanted to make you aware of that. Also wanted to make you aware of the state mandated education requirements. Either you'll be doing if it's your first year 6-hour orientation, or if you're continuing, then you'll do your 3-hour. And as you receive those certificates of completion, please pass those along to the planning department. So
Great, thank you.
that's all the staff has.
Before I forget, Mr. Stone, are there any recommendations from the IT function here with the town about our commission email addresses or anything? Or
Really, they have been releasing these training software training, and Pam, I see you've been doing those. Those are helpful. It'll come into your email as a know before. That's the name of the company that produces those. So those training opportunities are great. But staff's going to be taking action on our part to better kind of screen the applicants from public view.
Got it. Okay.
Don. So I have a suggestion. I was in Lynchburg, Virginia City Council meeting not too long ago, and their suffix is .gov. You know, I mean, this isn't for our committee, but you know, it may be something you might want to bring up to the IT people. You know, I wonder if it'd be worthwhile changing, you know, Town of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina .gov instead of .com, because there'd be a whole lot more security if the suffix was .gov instead of .com.
I'll certainly ask the IT department about it.
Okay.
Okay. Now will be the time for general public comment. So there will be opportunities. We have 2 public hearings tonight. Yeah, 2 public hearings tonight. So if you're here to speak about one of the proposals specifically, you're welcome to speak then. Or if you have things to comment on of a more general nature, you're welcome to do that now. Okay, seeing none, we will move ahead to agenda item 7A, which again is a public hearing, Chandler Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request to annex and zone RC2, 6.5 acres off of Chandler Road. This is a pretty straightforward request. The most difficult part was trying to find an aerial where I could pan out far enough and give you some kind of mile markers and understanding and orient you where this exactly is. You can see here it's north of Carolina Park and Pepper Plantation, and it's right here on Chandler Road, and this is outside the urban growth boundary. If we zoom into this site, we can see that it's even further off of Highway 17. It's about 1.1 miles off of Highway 17. And here's our 6.5 vacant acres that is currently in the county. And again, this is another instance where this property is within the 10-mile historic district within the county. It's outside the urban growth boundary. And currently the county assesses the density for this property as 0.33 units per acre. They are trending toward currently proposing 1 unit per acre for this area. But with RC2 and the town zoning, that would remain 0.33 units per acre. So the 6.5 acres, we're looking at 2 units if it were to be subdivided. And it is rural neighborhood as far as the future land use. So RC2 is the most appropriate request for this zoning designation and property. So that's all that staff has. Glad to answer any questions you have. And I don't know if the applicant's here or not, but
I do have a question about the urban growth boundary. We talk about it periodically, but how is that defined or established? And do you have a map indicating exactly where that boundary is, and a little more relevant to this particular application? I'm just curious more than anything else.
Sure. So I know the county established theirs 20 years ago, and we probably were mirroring that. But it's funny, this, even as far panned out as this aerial is, I still can't even show you how far north it is of the urban growth boundary.
Oh, wow.
But Darrell Creek Trail is on the one side of 17. Theodore Road is on the other side.
Yep.
So anything beyond that, it's important to place an envelope around your city limits, and so you just don't have sprawl.
Sure, I understand that
so,
part. Yeah, I
yeah.
just didn't know how it was, where it was defined, and what I should be using as sort of mental touch points or guideposts
Sure.
when we talk about the urban growth boundary. Okay. All right. Are there questions for Mr. Stone here while we have him on this particular topic?
No.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay.
So
Well,
is
It's
the,
public hearing.
is the
Yeah, I
applicant,
understand.
is the applicant on here?
yeah, I'll ask. This is a public hearing. Are there comments from the public on this particular application? Any public comments? And is the applicant here to speak to the application tonight? Yes, sir. We'll close the public hearing. There's no.
Yes, sir.
no
Thank
one-
you.
no one,
Tim Cook.
Avail themselves. If you would introduce yourself and give your address for the record.
Sure. Tim Cook, 412 Station 14. I'm the property owner, and so we're requesting to annex this portion. There's actually two portions, so we can add it to the adjacent parcel, which is already in the town. And we're requesting the same zoning, so it could be one parcel all zoned consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So we have gone in front of the historical commission for two parcels that we did previously subdivide out of this parcel, and they're 1.5 acres each on Chandler Road. And it was an interesting meeting because out of the 10 applications, mine was the only one that got approved. So they were in favor of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very consistent with the vernacular and the adjacent parcel sizes, so it fits in. And actually, East owned all those properties, so they're all. That's why I wanted to keep it very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have one. What about all the trees? I mean, it looks like this area is like pretty heavily forested. I mean,
Unfortunately, it was logged about 10 years ago.
it, what?
It was logged, so it was clear cut. So it has reestablished. There are some hardwoods, but not a tremendous number.
Are there any large caliber trees on the property?
Very few, but they'll obviously be protected. It's going to be used for residential, so it should be easy on an acre and a half lot to work around the trees.
How Peter? How old is the topo that we're looking at? How old is that?
This is 2025.
Oh, it's current. Okay.
This is basically think of it as scrub pines, Gary.
I see.
Yeah.
It's predominantly loblolly pines,
Mm.
with very few hardwoods.
Thoughts either from the applicant or staff regarding the historic community designation with the county. Is there a way to tag the property the same or similar with the town? I don't know what the process for doing that might be.
So the town would be more restrictive in this case if the county ends up going to a 1-to-1
Mm-hmm.
density. So 20,000 square foot lots for 30,000 square foot lots for RC2. And if it rural residential, that's 20,000. So
Mm-hmm. So there's not a historic structure on the property, but I was just more thinking about the surrounding community and the degree to which there might be restrictions or limitations associated with the historic character of the community.
Like the overlay.
Like an overlay, right? Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, we've been looking into that. It's really at this time it's the development standards preserve the cultural resources that are there, and kind of not creating lots and structures that stick out and don't fit in with that area. That's mainly it. But
Okay.
beyond that, we would have to develop our own design district like the county has.
Got it. Okay. All right. That's all I have. Anything?
No, I'm ready to move to approve, but I'll discuss why.
Any other questions or comments, thoughts, discussion?
No, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Okay, second,
Second,
or
fine.
second, whatever, whoever's first. I think that since the county is now planning on changing its RR designation to 1 unit per acre, and this application is to ask for RC2, which is 1 unit per 3 acres, we're far better off with this. So I'm in favor of rezoning. We don't have anything to do with annexation on this commission, so that's up. I'm assuming if there's one that's already in the city or in the town, then access for fire and that would be fine. But that's really up to council, not for us. But so I think it's makes perfect sense, and it preserves more of the rural nature than the county would be likely to after this.
Okay. Good. All right, so we'll take a vote. The motion is made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 7B, a public hearing for a zoning code text amendment on accessory structures.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Planning Commission members. So this should all be familiar to you. It started as a discussion at the committee level, kind of bounced back and forth, went to committee and council with recommendations from you all, and they have actually wanted to council wants to move forward with those recommendations. And so what's before you tonight is a more, it's in more ordinance form, and so I'm going to go through that as a reminder, and I also will need some input on a couple of things as well, particularly with the BAR. But again, this is a public hearing, and so we're looking to amend this this area of the text or of the zoning code. So I'm going to start with the detached accessory structures and how that ended up coming out and what that's going to look like. So as you'll recall, there was the recommendation to go in the old village to go back to 20 feet with a 10-foot setback, side and rear. The rest of the town, so the old Mount Pleasant and the entirety of the town, the proposal was to stay at 25 feet, but any portion of a detached accessory structure that was over 18 feet needed to have a 10-foot side and rear setback. And then there was also, it could not exceed 40% of the maximum of the building footprint of the primary structure. And so what that looks like is it affects, we started with the Old Village Historic District section. So the maximum accessory structure height would be, it'd be a maximum of 20 feet or the height of the principal structure, whichever is less. So that portion would stay in there. And then we added the accessory structure setbacks. So the minimum side and rear for all major residential accessory uses and structures shall be 10 feet. So remember, that was regardless of height, 10-foot setback in the Old Village Historic District. And then here we have, we're in the setbacks, height, and size of accessory uses and structures. And so what we did was propose to amend this table 6-foot/10-foot, and then we added footnotes. And then under the height, we put 18/25. And then you can see the footnotes. So there would be a 10-foot setback for all portions of a structure exceeding 18 feet. Proposed structures 18 or less may utilize the 6-foot. And then a couple of council members were adamant that they wanted that maximum height shall not exceed the principal structure. They wanted that to apply to the rest of town and not just the Old Village. And so that's been added in as footnote number 2. Here where we have the table on the maximum footprint for accessory buildings, it's already 850 square feet. But we added in the footnote of accessory structure maximum building footprint should not exceed 40% of the primary structure building footprint. Remember, we did a couple of comparisons to other municipalities. One of them had 50%, one 40%, and you all recommended 40%, and council agreed with that. So that would be a footnote under the maximum footprint of a detached accessory structure. That's all I have for the height and the setbacks. The next part of this would be the BAR section. So are there any questions or concerns or thoughts on this part? Feels like they really recommend, they wanted to move forward with everything you all recommended. So I think it was pretty straightforward. Okay. So for the neighborhood preservation overlay district, remember we talked about ways to control the size, mass, and scale of structures. You all recommended, and they agreed, is that you would apply BAR. It already applies to the Old Village, but it should apply to this section of the Neighborhood Preservation Overlay District. So again, that blue area there, and I'm going to come back to that map in a minute because I want to talk to you about a few things. But I did want to explain, because I went through it pretty quickly the last few times, so I did want to make sure everybody's clear on BAR, because I'm going to want some input on some other zoning districts. So BAR does apply to new construction of residential dwellings, including accessory buildings. So this does not apply to any commercial properties within that area. Just exactly the same as in the Old Village now. Exclusive of you know what? I meant to take that out. Exclusive of uncovered porches, decks, and terraces. That's correct. The BAR should not comprise more than 50% of the lot size. However, you're guaranteed a minimum 2,500 square feet. But again, you still have to meet your lot coverage, your 40% impervious surface. All those other development standards have to be met. And then your maximum BAR, regardless of your lot size, is 5,500 square feet. I had some examples. I can go through them. I did this for council and committee, but just kind of showing what that can look like with different sizes of lots. Thank you, Peter. He put these visuals together for me. So different scenarios where this could play out, depending on what your structure looks like. Do you have one primary structure? Do you have a smaller primary structure and a detached accessory structure? So we did an example with an 8,000 square foot lot, and then we did an example with a there it is, a 4,000 square foot lot, and what that looks like. What counts in the BAR? And again, this came straight from the Old Village Historic District. So these are the portions of the structures that count towards the BAR. Deck uncovered, no. Crawl space, no. Accessory building under 144 square feet does not count. And so you can see here. So we just are proposing to bring all of those same things over. So how that would look in the text amendment, so we went into the Neighborhood Preservation Overlay District Ordinance, and you go to height, and then you go to accessory buildings. And then what we added is BAR, and we said that it applies to Old Mount Pleasant neighborhood only, because we're not applying it to those other areas within the Neighborhood Preservation Overlay District. And what we literally did was take the BAR requirements from Old Village, and I just moved them over. And the only thing that I didn't keep was, there's a requirement in the Old Village, and I know that you're familiar with it, Mr. Chair, is you have to have a minimum 10% has to be porches, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, that didn't make sense in this area because this area is also SR2 overlay district, and it has extra special provisions for front porches and decks. So that is the only thing that I took out. The other thing that I did add was right here, building area in a crawl space is not counted. That sentence is all that exists in the Old Village. We don't actually define crawl space. So I added this for the purposes of this section, and I went and asked how our building and inspections division from the building code, how do they define crawl space? And so I brought that over, and I see now that I misspelled meet. And then I also wanted to point out that it does not meet the requirements of a story as we define it either. So we define crawl space, and it's consistent with how the building code describes it. And the minimum bar, it can't comprise more than 50% of the lot size. You have a minimum of 2,500, and it can't exceed the 5,500. And I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. And here's the next part of it. So again, everything else is exactly as it is in the Old Village. And then it just, impervious surface coverage, the next section just became E instead of D. So something that the committee talked about and council talked about and was, should we have the same numbers and percentages that we have in the Old Village? So we went and looked, and the old, and I know this isn't really big, but you can see the shade of brown in the Old Village. Most of Old Mount Pleasant, thanks Peter, is that same shade. It's all R2. You have similar lot sizes. So we really felt like those same requirements apply to all of those lots. However, You do have some R4 here in the pink, and then you have R3, which is duplexes. And we don't think that those should be excluded from the BAR, but perhaps in that R3 and R4 district, we need a lesser minimum than 2,500 because those are smaller lots, they're smaller lot sizes. And so that's really kind of wanted and then we do have a planned development there, but it had generally the same size of lots. So I think I think we got a pretty good handle on BAR. Those R2 lots that are similar in the Old Village are going to carry over into Old Mount Pleasant. But I do think we need to consider perhaps a different minimum square footage for those R3 and R4 lots.
And Michelle, do you have a recommendation on square footage maybe? You knew that was coming.
I knew that was coming, and I really don't. I wanted to kind of get your input, but what I did do was put in kind of what the minimum lot areas are for all of those. So you can see R1, R2, it's 10,000 and 8,000. So most of this area we're dealing with mostly 8,000 square foot lots minimum, they're R2. But when you get to the R3 and R4 districts, obviously it drops down. So, perhaps instead of the minimum 2,500, it's, a minimum 1,500. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if you all had any thoughts about that. And then we also do have an area in there that is a townhouse district. So, again, I don't know that we want to make up a bunch of different regulations for different zoning districts, but I want to make a point that there are these other zoning districts that aren't necessarily in the Old Village that we probably need to consider. And perhaps the townhouse district should be handled differently and should not be included. But we kind of, I know staff-wise, we kind of feel like the R3 and the R4 should be included in that BAR, but perhaps have a different minimum than the 2,500.
Well, I was just trying to think in terms of, if you look at it strictly mathematically, what portion of the bar would be the average of the lot area, square footage, and apply those or very similar ratios to those smaller parcels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like if you looked at the R2, which has 8,000 square foot lot,
Right.
2,500 would be a little more than a quarter.
Right.
Right.
So if
So
you were to
maybe
apply
it's
it
a-
to the other square footage,
That's the logic in my head. There may be,
Right.
I'm sure there are counter arguments. I just don't know.
I think rarely though are you going to get into a situation where somebody's going to improve one side of a duplex or another.
Yeah, good point.
I've seen situations where a townhome burned down and then was getting rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
I would be a little leery of putting percentages on it because the likelihood of the percentage matching what it was before would
Right.
probably create a conflict and a potential taking
Right.
that may not be wise.
And I agree with you on the duplex side, Adam, but I look at the detached house.
Yeah.
A 6,000 square foot house, maybe, I don't know,
Yeah.
1,800 square feet or
yeah,
something.
1,800 or 1,500.
Something like that.
1,500.
On your example, Adam, on your example of burning down, they'd be grandfathered, so they would be able to rebuild as they existed before.
Yeah, you have if it's a disaster or
It's not
something like
improvement,
that,
you know.
right? You have a certain, I forget, 3 years, 4 years where you're able to pull a building permit and build exactly what you had before.
You know,
Yeah.
Right,
and
right.
rebuild under the old
Yeah.
code.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah, as long
covered.
as there was some protective languages in there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Okay. So maybe we do
I do think a similar percentage.
Okay.
Like maybe even it out so that it's
Yeah,
Got it.
rounded somehow. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. Other than that, that's all we have for these text amendments. And so, with that, I'm happy to answer questions, or it is a public hearing, so we can.
Any questions for Michelle? At least we can call her back, but any immediate questions?
I just have one technical question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to wrap my head around what some of these things mean. So in the chart, crawl spaces do not apply to BAR.
Correct.
And then if you go for the next slide that you just had up there, with the text, under 2B, D2B, it says spaces under decks and porches that do not contain mechanical equipment are not considered crawl spaces.
Mhm.
So does that mean if they do contain mechanical equipment, they are considered, because crawl spaces aren't included? So why
Right.
would those things with
If
mechanical
it's
be included?
if it's not considered under the definition of a crawl space, it would be counted. Correct.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
interesting. All right, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Again, this is a public hearing, so are there anyone here this evening would care to speak on this particular topic? I know this was a topic of concern in parts of the old Mount Pleasant for the last several months, and eager to hear input from residents and other members of the community. Yes, sir. If you would state your name and your address for the record.
Thank you. Ryan Castle, the CEO of the Charleston Trident Association of Realtors. Our office address, 5006 Wetland Crossing, North Charleston. Thank you for having us here to me tonight, here on behalf of our 1,500 or so members that live in Mount Pleasant. Really, you guys have done a great job, I think, at some level of striking balance. Like, we're not here to really just throw this all out, because y'all have, from what initially were the conversations, this is more balanced than what we were expecting from the start of the conversations. As planning committee, and everyone has worked through all of these text amendments, right? But we just wanted to point out a couple issues. I think working through those different zoning districts, as Michelle talked about, is really important, because I've done a lot of spot checking of houses that have been built recently to see where they would end up, kind of with the data we actually have around building area ratios. In a lot of the regular zoning districts outside the special one she was talking about, you don't really see that a lot of building ratios. So, but I did want to just keep top of mind some other issues that some of our members have raised to us as we've looked at this, that may be an impact down the line that you may not be thinking of with some of these proposals. So on the accessory structures for the height restrictions, you have to look at this and compare it to the second issue you're working on, right? So by limiting accessory structures to the same story as the main house, you may actually be encouraging more teardowns, which you're trying to avoid from the start of this outset in the second leg, right? So if you're not allowing a garage with a living space or more space above, you may actually be encouraging them to say, hey, I'm just going to go rebuild the whole house if I can't add the extra space I need on the accessory structure. So we just wanted to point that out, that it may actually be contrary to your second objective on the zoning districts as you look at them. Also, you can't look at these proposals just by this. You have to look at it in comparison with everything on the building side. So while this will limit, let's be clear, right? The purpose of this is to limit more accessory structures, which by scaling back the height in some areas, setting further setbacks that won't allow all property owners to take it, you're going to have less accessory structures built, which means less of accessory dwelling units, which means less attainable housing being put in that works within the concert of the community, that everyone says in town is needed. So as you look at that, but also as you scale that back down, add those setbacks, now you pair the newer tree ordinance on top of it, you're going to see a lot less projects built, right? Because there's just not going to be enough room. So I just think when you do all of this, you need to be thinking of impact, not just what this does, but how it works with concert with all your other regulations you put in. And then quite honestly, this is going to be the second time in a year you've changed this height restriction. There's a lot of people that may have seen the new zoning code, not a lot, but some, with plans to do this over the next couple of years and add an accessory structure, and you're changing the rules of the game on them and limiting their property rights when you go through that. So that's just on the accessory height things, just things to think about as you go through it. On the building area ratio expansion, and I think several council members have brought this up, you are basically choosing winners and losers. you're winning, who you're choosing to win with, is the people that have already moved here, bought a house, and renovated the house. Who's losing is the longtime Mount Pleasant property owners who have not sold. That is, without a doubt, the winner and the loser. That may be what people want. That's fine, but you have to be clear on what's happening here, right? Is you're putting more restrictions on the people that have not renovated their house and not on the people that did already. And so at that point, you're hurting those longtime residents.
So we actually have a 2.5 minute.
So
time limit.
that's
You've
all I have.
exceeded
Just
that.
things for y'all to think about. Like I said, we really appreciate the time you're taking and the expertise you're putting into this and the thoughtfulness of it. But those are just things to think about as you go forward.
Great. Thank you, sir. Anyone else to speak on this topic? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Further questions for Michelle or discussion?
I mean, I have some thoughts. I don't know if
Yeah.
I want to move first or.
Oh, go
I mean,
ahead. Share your
I
thoughts.
think these are all good changes, and most of them are things that we suggested as well
Mhm.
before it went to committee and council. Just to address some of, I appreciate everything that you say. It always depends on whose shoes you're in, when you're looking at changes. But we have to look at public policy, and zoning changes always are meant to address, changes and problems that have existed over time. So our duty is to try to correct problems that we see happening in the town. One of them is higher density, higher population growth. So it seems to me that avoiding denser population, especially in these very dense areas where it changes the character, outweighs a lot of those concerns. Expanding a principal structure instead of adding an accessory structure to me is preferable because you have one dwelling instead of two. So it means maybe one family instead of two, or fewer cars, let's say. It's hard to say, but to avoid fixing something just because some people haven't taken advantage of what was allowed before isn't really a reason not to make the changes to fix some zoning issues that we see happening. So, while I appreciate the sentiments, I do think that what has been done here is a really good balance. It tries to, allow a certain amount without a detrimental effect on these areas.
I would just add to that, it's not completely limiting the opportunity for people to add square footage. It's just reducing it to the point where it gives, I don't know, just better taste to the community. The scaling, the massing is really critical when you're doing these things. So I think that architects' creativity and the ability to be able to still flow and function is still there. It's just not going to be quite as robust because they think their home is worth $500 a square foot. So let's add 100 more square feet. That really shouldn't be the ultimate driver of how a community gets designed.
Yep, I agree. Michelle, you've had comments or concerns about a lot of these issues in the past. Any thoughts this evening? You're good? Gary, Bill? I'm good. Okay. Make a motion?
Sure. I'll move to recommend all of these changes with the suggestion that we made to the R3 and R4 to committee and council.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. Mr. Davis seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item 7C, this is a sketch plan for 1328 Erkman Drive.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. I have the honor to introduce one of our newest environmental managers, Ms. Mae Gimbert. She has actually taken John Farrell's place. John's moved on, but she was our DRT coordinator and is now backfilling the environmental manager position. So she'll be doing some sketch plans, and you'll be seeing more of her in the future.
Good. Thanks, Kevin. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Planning Commission. So this application is a subdivision for 1328 Erkman Drive. Oh, sorry, I'm a little short.
There you go.
There you go.
So the current lot is 0.46 acre property and currently zoned R2. So action to be taken tonight is approval with staff comments, or denial. So this is an aerial image of 1328 Erkman Drive. It is off Coleman Boulevard, down the street from Red Drum Restaurant, if you're familiar with that location.
Mm-hmm.
This is a bird's eye view of the property, and you're able to see the structures currently on the property. It is currently zoned R2 and surrounded by R2, and they're not looking to change the zoning. And the future land use is conventional residential neighborhood. So a little bit of history for this site. Prior to 1996, it was 2 longer linear lots, and then in 1996, they abandoned the red property line, aggregating the back lot to create this larger L-shaped lot that you see in the shaded blue, and the green line is the added property line. So this is the sketch plan in front of you tonight. The front lot 2A is approximately 0.19 acres, and the lot 2B 0.28 acres. The red line is the proposed property line, and there is a private ingress egress to access the back lot. So this is R2 minimum. The minimum lot dimensional requirements for R2 are 60-foot width by 90-foot depth and a minimum of 8,000 square feet. There are no trees being requested for removal, and the applicant is applying with a land development regulations waiver to subdivide off a private ingress egress. So the applicant is required to meet the tree requirement of 160 inches per acre, and in order to meet this, they are committing to plant 49 inches. They will need to relocate the water line and sewer line within the 10-foot utility easement or expand the easement to include those lines. The water and wastewater impact fees will be due prior to the lot's subdivision. Staff recommends accounting for next door stormwater runoff by either capturing runoff in storage or providing a conveyance swale to route runoff towards the road down the property line. So they have provided a preliminary drainage plan and have been working with Marissa Noble, our town engineer, and are addressing her comments. They're also within the Old Village Builder Guide, which has some stricter stormwater regulations. And the new property line is proposed through an existing garage, so that will need to be moved prior to final approval. And just to be clear, it's the garage that needs to be moved, not the property line. So the applicant is here to answer any of your questions, and I'm also happy to answer any questions within the presentation.
Any questions? We can call her back up, of course, but are there immediate questions for? No. Is the applicant present? Yes, sir. If you would, introduce yourself with your name and your address for the record.
My name is Louis Seabrook. I'm a civil engineer and land surveyor representing the owner of the property. As you could tell by what she showed you, this is an L-shaped lot with the vast majority of the improvements on the back half of it. The owner of the property is interested in getting rid of the part in front of him, and he is contracted with another engineering firm to provide stormwater design, which I believe was submitted recently. That is correct, isn't it? They submitted the revised to you? Plan? Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
under review.
Yeah, and it's as Kevin says, it's under review.
Mm-hmm.
I can answer any questions that you might have, hopefully.
So intended access for the rear of the property, or the rear lot, is intended to be in that gray area that we're seeing on the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the property owner is intending to remove the garage entirely.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts regarding the proposal? Questions for the applicant?
Not unless you have a question.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir. We appreciate it. All right, thoughts, discussion?
This creates a flag lot.
It does.
This creates a flag lot, which we generally do not approve and do not want. And in terms of the size of the lots, it just seems to me, as I'm looking at the map of the various lots, they're quite a variety actually of sizes. It seems like the one right next to it, Lot 1 of the Margaret Thornton Revocable Trust, is small, but the ones to the left of it are large. So it doesn't seem like it's it's incongruous in terms of the size of the lots in the neighborhood. And it would just end up creating more residential houses.
Right. Yeah, my views are mostly consistent with Pam's. I'm not a big advocate of flag lots for a variety of reasons. I live near a flag lot right now, and there's been restoration of that home ongoing for almost 3 years, and it's inconvenienced every homeowner around that property because of poor access to what they needed to do to restore their home. And I know of other situations that are somewhat similar to that. So I'm uncomfortable creating even a modest precedent for approving flag lots around the town. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that access to the rear home, I guess, is, while that may be fine, there's likely going to be another driveway.
Right.
Not that completely matters, but it begins to create some circulation issues, I think, to your
Right, I
point
agree.
about traffic.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or concerns?
May I make an additional comment?
I think we're supposed
Yes,
to
no?
be able to ask.
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Would point out that both of the lots are, as proposed, are larger than the minimum requirement for the zoning.
Yeah.
And the creation of the easement does not create a flag lot because it still remains part of the first lot.
I don't get that. What is
It's
that?
just an access way. It is not part of the back lot.
But the effect of it is the
Right.
same.
That's right.
I understand that, but I just want to make sure that everybody understood that it was
Right.
not being
It's an
attached
no.
to the
Yeah.
back lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that all of the requirements for the waiver are convincing, especially A3, which it says the granting of the waiver would only affect the subject lot and have no impact on surrounding properties.
Yeah.
To your point, Mr. Chair, I think that that's not necessarily the case. So I'd be inclined not to approve it.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts? If you care to, Pam, you may want to make
I can move
a
to
motion.
deny.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Michelle's seconded the motion to deny the proposal. All those in favor of denial say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Agenda item 7D. This is engineering and development staff presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. This is what I would call the informal part of the agenda. So we're going to keep this casual, and as I kind of go through this really is a continuation of what we discussed 2 months ago, because we didn't have a Planning Commission last month. So any questions or anything as we kind of go through this, feel free to ask, or even if you need to leave, step out. This is perfectly fine too. So This is just for y'all's benefit, really. So last month we discussed, or we kind of put on the table, a number of different topics. We also went through the stormwater planning examples for single-family residents. And what I heard at the very end was, hey, take me through the commercial process. Ms. Ireland, you asked that, so we'll touch on that a little bit. And also some more discussion on subdivisions and densities and things like that. And we can wrap up the quick discussion on those particular items and then circle back to this, and maybe next month, if y'all are interested in something else, we can also explore some more topics if you want. But for tonight, it's just a real quick presentation, is commercial review and approval processes, and then how we go about the density calculation. So I felt like a little flow chart might be the best way of explaining the relationship between Planning Commission, Design Review Board, Town Council, staff. They're somewhat separate, but kind of equal. Town Council obviously is the ultimate authority. They adopt all the regulations. They also appoint Planning Commission members, as you know, and they also appoint Design Review Board members. However, Planning Commission has more of a legislative type of role where they create standards, policies, and even last year, y'all came through with brand new zoning regulations. So there's more of a collaboration between staff and Planning Commission, and then that gets recommended to Town Council, as y'all know. Design Review Board, they see commercial development, but they're more of a decision-making body where they don't really do the legislation part of this. However, interesting enough, Planning Commission reviews zoning code and approves the subsection H, which is building and site design. Design Review Board has a 156-1466 that allows them flexibility to modify and adjust the section that has been approved. So there's some flexibility that goes along with the review of the Design Review Board as they review projects, and they come through for their review. And staff, of course, we have two, a landscape and an architect-oriented staff folks in our planning department that are staffing the Design Review Board. And yeah, just as a very simple, easy relationship, there's no obvious cross relationship between Design Review Board and Planning Commission, and Design Review Board are not charged with creating policies and standards as the Planning Commission. So hopefully that made that clear. Very simply, the steps involved with getting a commercial development approved. Our design review team, which is staff, high-level feasibility meeting in the very beginning. A number of members are a part of that. We have Mount Pleasant Waterworks also participating in that, planning, engineering. Then next step is more of a hard design, conceptual design. This is them getting queued up for if they're residential, they go to Planning Commission. If they're commercial, they go to take the DRB route. They have to go twice to Design Review Board, one preliminary and then again at the final. Sometimes if there are, and it's up to the applicant, they can go ahead and submit for technical review ahead of the final approval. It all depends on the staff and the comments that are associated with the preliminary review, but they can go ahead and start that technical review process. And then once they have their MS4, which is part of the DRT, and that is our water quality stormwater regulations, then they are allowed to be released for construction. So hopefully I did not oversimplify this, but I did want to provide Ms. Ireland with a little oversight and a little in-depth. And of course, we do have planning members that can go a little bit farther in depth with everything that they do on that end. But that is, the process of that. So I had this slide here. Y'all probably saw this two months ago, but just to nail this, hammer this home, Planning Commission does have the authority. Matters of building, bulk, height, density, you name it. A lot of purview that the Planning Commission does have in relationship to commercial projects moving forward. So before I get into density, is there any questions on the commercial review process.
I don't have a question about that. And this is a really random question, but it
Okay.
comes to mind. And it's kind of a weird question, but
Sorry.
when I go by Carolina Park and see the commercial thing on the corner between Costco and the library, that's a huge open space now. That is okay. So it's on whatever that road is that
Park
connects.
Avenue Boulevard.
Yeah,
across
Park
from the
Avenue
library.
Boulevard and
Just
Carolina
cleared
Park
all that.
Boulevard.
Yes, ma'am.
So I constantly hear from people in the public that we shouldn't allow clear cutting of trees for commercial properties or anything, but commercial. And then I also hear people say that we shouldn't protect any pine trees. And I know this isn't your specific,
It's okay.
lane here, but so there's not a single tree that's been left on that lot. And I'm assuming that a lot of them could have been oak trees. They weren't all pine trees, for instance. They weren't all, I don't know, but I don't know. So when somebody asks me that, I like to be able to tell them what really happened. And I don't really know what happened. Can you or anybody else shed any light on that?
I will be happy to provide whatever detailed and show you the plans and all that. I was not prepared to speak on that
I know.
specifically.
No,
so,
I know, but I just figured I'd ask that
yeah.
now.
I'm happy to
Yeah.
answer.
Okay, good.
We get that a lot, Miss Ireland. Carolina Park is
It's part of them. It's got its own.
It's got a
PD.
development agreement. So even though we now, DRB does have purview over tree removal, but they have to go by the same standards that we have in our zoning code, but not Carolina Park. Carolina Park is locked into their development agreement, and so they're locked into a tree ordinance from 2011.
Okay.
So they and all commercial projects in Carolina Park do not go to DRB.
Okay, because that's what I knew it was a PD. I knew, but I thought just some of the tree things in our code still apply to them or
It's not the PD, it's the development agreement.
It's the development.
It's the development agreement. So they don't go to DRB, they have their own separate ARB. So staff level, we look at it for commercial, but it does not go to our design review board, and we do not govern their trees.
Yeah, basically we have no control over what happens over there.
Yeah, it sort of amazes me that, and again, this is past history, so there's nothing anybody can do about it. But it just, it is amazing that and maybe they've got a great landscape plan that's going to be, enacted once they've got the buildings up. I don't really know, but it is a vast area right there, and it does make a big impact on people. So I've said a million times they're part of a PD, and again, the development agreement, I kind of forget the difference between the two sometimes, but I was just curious as to whether our zoning code has any, how sometimes in a PD we still have certain parts of our zoning code that apply to a commercial, like the base zoning would still apply, that sort of thing, for like town center, which was a recent one we talked about. So just curious about that. So I just figured I'd ask it since
Isn't it true that when this plan was developed, Billy Swales, the mayor at the time signed off on it. They basically gave my understanding is they gave basically carte blanche to the Marinos to do whatever they wanted to do with that huge piece of property, and so they built Carolina Park, and now they can do whatever they want to do in turn, tearing down trees, building warehouses, doing whatever they want to do. And it's my understanding that, because of that agreement that they have with the town that was 15 or 20 years ago, that there's just simply nothing we can do about it. I mean,
it is a development agreement, which is a contract.
Yeah.
It's
There
not a
are
zoning.
other
zoning.
PDs in town that are not subject to the current tree ordinance. They're to the 2011
It's like they're not. It's like they're not. It's like they're not part of Mount Pleasant. I mean, they can just basically do what they
it's
want
like
to do.
their own little city.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
I think Brickyard is too.
It's unfortunate.
Good
but that's the
question,
way it is.
but sorry, I wasn't
Just
prepared
trying,
to talk
trying to piece
specifics on
together-
a particular project.
Yes, no,
but
absolutely understand.
I wanted to take everybody kind of through the commercial process that, it is formalized and there are, it is there, and see if there's anything else that y'all would like to know before I get into the density stuff.
A question, again,
Yes,
this
ma'am.
might not all be for you, but a question just about DRB and some of the flexibility they have.
Yeah.
It's a large section of the zoning code that has the design, guidelines, and how much leeway do they really have? Like, can they basically approve anything they want and say, well, we've got flexibility, or because it does seem a little incongruous to have guidelines with specific, you know, roof line.
Are you talking about commercial or
Yeah,
residential?
it's all commercial.
You're referring to commercial.
All commercial. I mean, is there?
Adam's
anybody
familiar with
explain- Yeah.
Well, first element is just because of the nature of the, I don't want to use the word pecking order, but the way these plans unfold, a lot of times DRB building plans are being reviewed still for completeness to be able to construct them for safety, even after DRT. And so that sort of feels like DRB. But to your point, I would say dozens of clients I work with have a desire to make their buildings attractive, financeable, leasable. They want to work with the DRB to make these projects successful in keeping with what we're doing here in the town. But I also know that you've got a lot of successful, qualified folks that are reviewing these drawings in such a way that more thorough than I could. And I've been in the industry for 25 years now. So I feel good about our DRB.
Good.
So,
Good to hear that.
I feel good about
Yeah, I was just curious if we have pitch roofs and no flat roofs, could they just say, well, we want this to be a flat roof anyway?
Well, per ordinance, they do have straight black and white, the ability to modify and adjust anything in there. It does not say one particular thing or the other. So by ordinance, strict definition, they do have the ability to make those kind of changes where they see fit. To his point that he did make about the quality of or the talent that we have two seats that one is for an architect and the other one is for a civil engineer. The rest of the seats are large. So we want to make sure that there is people of the industry.
Expertise in that.
There's some depth to talent level or expertise in that particular area for the DRB board staffing.
Thanks.
Unlike planning commission where we just get very smart professional like
we have Kevin. Kevin Bear's here.
So that's okay. We can kind of move on here to
thank you
to the good part. All right, zoning code and talking about density calculation. Okay, spent a little time on this, and I got a couple of examples. I think it's a very interesting situation because it's a very easy equation. Of course, you've got number of units divided by the gross area of land. Nothing's magical about that. But when we start getting into what the gross area of land and the nuances and everything, it does get a little interesting. And one little tidbit is it does not apply to lots that are less than 1 acre. So we'll touch on that. Just it allows for the minimum lot sizes to govern the ability to subdivide the property, which is very key to what we're going to be discussing tonight. So again, that's in 156.025. You read it yourself. Equal to or greater than 1 acre in size, it does not apply. The density calculation is just governed by the minimum lot size. So getting a little deeper, what is included in the calculation? Well, some people do not know this, but freshwater wetlands is actually part of the gross area. And that is, you have both sides of the coins on this. So I've got a little hypothetical calculation in the next slide, but also in there is accessory dwelling units. Just pointing this out is not included also in the calculation for density, even though the density calculation is dwelling units per acre. This, of course, for reasons of attainability, like you heard earlier, that was specifically called out as not being in the calculation. So just touching a little bit on the wetlands, what that really does when you start looking at developing larger tracts of land. This just randomly took 100 acres, 20 acres of jurisdictional wetlands. Let's say the zoning allows 3 dwelling units per acre. Do the math, 300 dwelling units are allowed. That's with the 20 acres of wetlands. So if you take the wetlands out, you're left with 80 acres of actual developable property, and then the density really is 240 dwelling units. Now, the smaller the acreage, of course, the smaller the gap between what you're allowed and what you're not allowed. But I wanted to make sure that everybody kind of understood that you're counting undevelopable land within your gross area for the amount of units that you're allowed on your property. So hopefully that, registers a little bit, and some people may not understand that is actual part of the density calculation. So looking ahead at some of the quote unquote threats for Mount Pleasant when it comes to subdivisions and densities alike. So we are going to be seeing more piecemeal subdivision requests within the settlement areas. There's no doubt about it. There are going to be potential for numerous points of access, which are going to be unmanaged. We've got a lot of the county property that will be annexed, and then therefore, because they're being annexed into town, rezoned, and then therefore sold, subdivided. Large tracts of land historically have been subdivided through family members, but not quite to the degree where it really marries well with our density requirements. Also, what we're going to be seeing is a lot smaller, less than 1 acre subdivisions where the densities will not be applicable. Number 3 is the increase of access through a neighbor's yard via access easements. Consuming lot sizes, and in my opinion, not really meeting the spirit of an actual lot size, because you have a driveway now that's part of what is intended to be somebody's property or yard. Also, another consideration is the transformation of established development patterns. Backyards kind of becoming lots, so just touching on a couple of these things when it comes to subdividing, which does increase density. So, as I mentioned, some unincorporated areas that have recently been annexed into the town of Mount Pleasant. We have a long rectangular shaped piece of property. Y'all have seen this sort of scenario before. 1 lot, applicant potentially would come in to us and say, hey, I'd like 3 lots. He has a minimum, or CC zoning allows for 12.5, but there is a maximum on the CC zoning of 3 units per acre. However, this particular lot is 0.86 acres, which is not applicable to the density requirements. Therefore, 3 lots could be allowed on this property. And if you did the math, 3.5 units per acre is actually higher than what the actual zoning is intended to manage in this particular area. So, and also the access points. Now you have lot 1, lot 2. They're actually having somebody else's driveway on their property, so you're reducing essentially the usable lot area because of somebody's driveway that's on somebody else's property. So again, this may look familiar. Well, I don't think I need to go too far into this, but this is what potentially could happen to density if you have 1 lot that does become 2. This is zoned R2, 3 units per acre is the maximum allowed density. However, less than 1 acre, this is actually 0.7 acres. So if this were to get subdivided, you would have 2 lots. Potentially, with ADUs located on this, you could potentially have 8.5 dwelling units per acre within that small little area. But with just 1 lot, with just 2 lots in that small of an area, your density for those 2 particular, for that 1 large 0.47 acre, you actually have a 4.25 lot per acre density requirement, which is well higher than the units, 3 units per acre. That's the zoning is intended to only allow. And again, you do have this driveway that goes through someone's property that, their actual setback is measured from the red line through the easement. So you can actually have a house that's positioned right next to somebody's driveway if there's not really enough room on there. So I use this as an example because we had this kind of teed up and ready for tonight's meeting. But again, 2 more examples, and then I'll summarize here. On Pocahontas Street, you can really see the difference between the two. Brick ranches on the right, new development on the left. This is kind of right for that type of cookie cutter or that type of subdivisions that we were talking about. These lots on the right of Pocahontas is 215 feet. It is R2 zoned. There's three. The minimum lot size is 8,000 square feet. You can actually subdivide these particular properties without being in sort of without having ownership of two or more lots to be able to subdivide. So there's enough room and enough width and depth for that to occur. So there's 18,000 square feet for this one. But let's say a scenario came in where you have incrementally someone very much like Ertman purchase the backyard of the adjacent property owner and then come in later at a later date. You could essentially have somebody's lot in the backyards of property there with a shared ingress egress easement down the side. That can happen all the way down Pocahontas. So last example, King Street. As you can see in this photograph here, there are traditional homes, single story, large yards, and potential subdivision that could occur here in a well-established block neighborhood. There's been no subdivisions on this particular block, but you see how deep these lots are. Actually, both of them together are 37,000 square feet, whereas R1 is only 10,000 minimum square foot. The depth is there for this to occur. You can actually have a lot split in between the two lots, created a third lot in that kind of row scenario, and meet all lot dimensional requirements with an ingress egress easement coming down the side. So this area shaded in blue is actually 11,000 square feet, which they can actually make this a little bit smaller, work a little bit more with that, and meet all lot dimensional requirements, meet all minimum square foot area, and legally meet the letter of the law for a subdivision. And it would only be up to a waiver that would prevent that from occurring on an ingress egress easement. So, wrapping this up, some opportunities. This is for y'all's discussion. This is for y'all to give us staff feedback to continue the discussion, or we can just kind of move on and work it through waivers if you like. But density area threshold, if there's any consideration for working with that 1 acre threshold. The JD jurisdictional wetlands acreage is included in the gross area. Established neighborhood patterns, access easements, parts lot dimensional requirements. I'm summarizing all the points that were made. That really does and is continuously starting to put pressure on us staff, bringing things for y'all, and essentially y'all are being pressured into subdividing things that are not harmonious, I guess I should say. But
Kevin,
anyway,
explain that too, if you would.
Yes, sir.
Jurisdictional wetlands acreage.
Yeah.
I saw one situation where I was told about a situation in, it was the old village, where someone was trying to, was proposing more BAR by arguing that the marsh, which was adjacent to their property, be included as part of the area, and
the building area ratio as part of the area of the lot, and they were trying to include the marsh.
They wanted to include at least some, but their point was, oh gosh, look at all this marsh, it's going to be open because it's marsh. Why don't you let us have a little more square footage, because there's all this space back here, even though we don't necessarily own
it.
it.
I can build a bigger house because there's the marsh that's not going to complain about it.
Essentially filling up all the high ground by counting the marsh as the extra.
So I didn't know whether that argument was at play in number 2 here. I'm not sure I understand.
It does exclude marsh, saltwater area. So that, and when it comes to density calculations, you do not include the marsh area. These are wetlands contained within the perimeter boundary of the property.
Okay.
These are freshwater wetlands.
Yeah, I see.
So those are actually part of the gross area, which yields higher number of lots as a result of including what would really be undeveloped property. So, I mean, there's two ways to look at it too. I mean, you don't want to incentivize the filling of these wetlands, but then you don't want to de-incentivize the applicant from protecting the wetlands. So there's a balance there, and I get both sides.
A few pages ago, you also made a point about accessory structures or ADUs are not included in density calculations, correct?
Yes, sir.
But it's explicitly accessory structures, not dwelling units, correct?
No, it said ADUs.
It did say
That's why
ADUs?
it blew my mind that
Yeah, I was surprised by that. Okay, I'm glad you caught
not
me.
because
All
they're
right.
two different.
I wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, that
Accessory
on
dwelling
B.
units.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Dwellings, yes, sir.
That's another.
That seems like a
person
no-no
in
to me.
Another car,
So-
at least, right?
Yeah.
That's density to me.
It is on the same lot, but when you consider dwelling units, not lots, then you're looking at, like the example on Artman, you're looking at 8 dwelling units per acre. But if you calculate it by lots, you're only looking at 4 dwelling units, 4 lots per acre.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean when it does get a little bit
That's messy.
into the weeds, a little messy when you start looking at what variables are going into the equation itself. But
I mean, I think going forward again to the last slide that you had about opportunities down the line, I think the last one, which is what we just grappled with, is a really good thing to discuss and figure out if we can close a loophole. I really do think, I mean, I never like having to look at the 4 requirements to get the waiver
I
from
agree.
the LDRs as the only basis for saying no. I would like to make that stricter so that you can't have, the flag lot type of a situation, or you have to have public access, in other words, directly to the lot and not through another person's lot, because that could create so many. When you see these roads and they have lots that back up to one another, like what you were showing us, virtually everyone on the block could end up with that sort of thing.
Well, and then you add 2 ADUs on that back lot.
exactly.
Now you've got
Now we've got
2 more
4
people.
times or
Yeah,
8
the
times
traffic
number of
coming in and
people
out
on
there.
cars.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's one thing I'd really love to, see if we could type in.
one thought is on that particular thing is, we have minimum dimensional requirements for public roads, but what we can consider and look at is an actual private road, a road that's cut out that could be smaller in dimensions, but part of like an HOA lot that is actually owned by the entities there that would more or less, now you've got an actual lot that meets the development requirements, and
So
then
you
you
still
also
have
has a
setbacks.
private road that separates the two and does not overlap the easement with the lot itself. It actually designates a property, makes things a lot more cleaner in the maintenance area of who does what and who benefits for what. The problem is, like, it goes back to all the county lots that will eventually be annexed. I'm assuming one day is that now you're going to have every single lot is going to have its own access point
private
all the way down the road.
Right.
So you're developing in kind of a silo where it's just, okay, you let this guy over here do this,
Right.
this guy here has to do it, and then it'll just domino.
Right.
And you're going to have,
And that's that much more pavement that,
Right.
is on every lot. You'd have a private road going back. You'd have to have enough turnaround space for a, fire vehicle or emergency vehicle. And that doesn't make a lot of sense either if it starts, the slippery slope idea.
Yes, it is.
So
Yeah.
Kevin, I think in general, everybody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's sensitivity to all of this.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And as you've at least implied, or probably the reason you've presented this to us is because we are faced with this in increments almost every meeting in some form or another. And so we'll take recommendations from you. And what do you need from us in terms of a request for us to start chipping away at pulling that in? Does that?
Yeah, obviously the only going to add is I think this is all really crucial to development in general, but in being acute, I guess guess in our approach for density's sake in these established communities, I
Right.
think it's ultra critical. You've
Yeah.
seen kind of by way of how I comment on this stuff.
Mhm.
However, me being kind of a commercial mindset, I
Mhm.
still think that density is your friend when it's planned properly.
I agree with that. When it's planned properly.
I feel like we have to be. This is my opinion. I feel like that sometimes the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
We just have to be cautious of that as a group and
Yeah.
really group think it. But it's all still our individual opinions. of
Yeah,
course.
I'm in 100%
Yeah, I agree.
agreement. I think, density where it's been deliberate, methodical,
Right.
and understood, intentional, all of that.
Right.
I'm for. It's when
Yeah.
we're pressed to essentially remake a
It's-
neighborhood.
Redevelopment.
That's the problem.
That's the
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, an example of what's existing now, which I think needs to get addressed longer term, is for commercial, for instance, adding mixed use, adding residential to commercial properties. We currently have hubs that are supposed to be the denser areas because they're at major intersections, 50, 526 and 17, or Houston Northcutt. Those areas are the hubs. But then we also have the ability to put mixed use on every single commercial property in town. It's 4 per acre, residential, and an additional 4 if they want them to be attainable. And of course, nobody's going to do 4 and 4, but let's just say they do 4 and they ask for 2 more, they ask for exception so that they have 6 and 2. Now you've got the entire corridor of 17, the entire corridor of, Coleman, everywhere else where you have commercial properties could have these densities building up, and we have the hubs. It's kind of a double whammy. So I think overall we need to, I agree with you that density where it's properly planned is a good idea, but not just having, the corridor was supposed to be replaced by the sort of hub cluster, idea, not in addition to. So that's a concern I have kind of going down the line.
Mhm.
But the residential densities,
Yeah,
I
this
agree
feels
with
more
you.
residential
And the
than-
residential
Yeah.
densities, I think, do apply more to the traditional neighborhoods
Of
because
course.
there's so many HOAs that have their own rules.
Right.
Mhm.
So it really always, it's just like the ADUs and like short-term rentals. It all filters into those those traditional neighborhoods because, the others have rules.
People just love Mount Pleasant.
And I
So
hate the
Kevin,
idea
how
that if
can we
build-
direct you? What is there a way that we can sort of start incrementally chipping away at some of this, or do we do it all in one fill?
This is really for planning commission discussion. I would like to, point out the fact that 1 acre threshold,
Mhm.
that to me is really
big.
that would be at the top of the list if you really wanted to make a change.
Because things start
Just
flowing
because,
from there. don't they?
yes,
Yeah.
using lot sizes like an R1 where it's 10,000 square feet. Well, that's
Mhm.
3, that's 4 lots you can put in 1 acre.
Mhm.
So I don't know the reason for the 1 acre threshold. It's always been there, and it's never been discussed.
Hmm.
From my recollection, has never been really tested. But I
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
it's come to this point where that's all you're going to see over the next 5+ years are these 0.8 acre lots that want to get 3 lots on it.
Mhm.
That will go all the way down the road. Then all of a sudden you've got a CC zoned area that has a density of almost 5
Mhm.
units per acre. So if you want some low hanging fruit, that would be my suggestion, is consider that 1 acre threshold
Okay.
as being
For
something that
subdivisions, you mean?
might need to
Yeah.
go away.
Yeah.
So
Or, yeah, for
Make it
subdivisions.
smaller.
And the other thing too, we've seen, I think, enough of these proposals like we saw this evening, where there's a proposed easement,
Yes.
ingress or access point, and we just if there's a way for us to prevent those from even coming our way, that would be my strong preference. Staff say, hey, this isn't going to, the ordinances restrict you from doing that, or whatever makes sense. Otherwise, we're just going to keep seeing them,
Yeah, you
throughout every year.
And like you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that's very sensitive. You have a lot of people that own property that do intend to have this opportunity.
Right.
So like the gentleman said earlier, there's going to be winners and losers in this sort of situation, and that is going to be a very sensitive situation.
Yep.
So that's why staff would appreciate Planning Commission making, the recommendations and guiding us into providing you with information to move forward with. So.
Well, I mean, I would like to see developed an ordinance that, or part of the code that would prevent these from happening, and not simply going through a waiver of the LDRs.
Mm-hmm.
So is that possible? I mean, that's what I would love to see. If there's a problem with that, we need to know. But I think that's right now the only power we have is to look at the 4 requirements for getting the waiver.
Right.
Yes.
I'd like to circumvent that and say there are a lot of reasons, public policy and planning reasons, not to have those lots, and so I'd like to prohibit them.
I agree.
Talking about
Any other
access
thoughts?
easements, right?
Michelle?
You're talking about subdivisions off of access easements.
Correct.
Yes,
That's what you're
correct.
okay.
Yeah. Thoughts?
I still feel like we're talking about these well-established neighborhoods.
Yes,
historical
agree.
features.
Apply to them.
Yeah, apply to that. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
I
think
could
you're
bring something back.
Yeah, you're hearing
Make it
from
for
us. that-
zoning, like
yeah.
the neighborhood preservation zoning or whatever, just
Mhm.
eliminating access
Right.
easements
Yeah.
from subdivisions.
Yeah,
You
so
have
not
to
just Old
decrease it.
Pleasant,
Um,
but the neighborhood
Oh, yeah, no,
preservation
yeah, just in
overlay,
general,
Native
yeah.
Groves and the other places as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Got some smart people on staff, I think, can do a good job with working that
I
into
mean,
a
that's
zoning
pretty
code.
straightforward, and I think that would
Make it
solve-
easy.
It would end up making our agendas a little shorter too.
Shorter? I don't know how
Yeah.
short it could actually get.
That way Mr. Stone becomes the enforcer, the arbiter. Yeah.
It does. I think we're well beyond that point of addressing these sort of issues.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Because again, I've seen it enough, just in areas that I observe where it's a problem. It really is a
I
problem.
can't remember one where I
It's-
thought there was really a good reason.
Well, it's not just the aesthetics, and it's not just because it's different. It
feels different.
It just becomes a problem.
Exactly.
And they impose themselves, meaning the property itself, not the people necessarily, but on the surrounding property owners, and it's just not good.
Well, if that's the consensus,
Yes,
we
I think so.
We will bring back a couple of suggestions.
Please do.
And we can continue the discussion of access easements or subdivisions from access easements.
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
also consider the 1 acre?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I think that,
threshold
I think it's
Want me to do
intended
that
to
too?
both
Two things at
those,
once.
those two items. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's very easy. You know exactly what I'm going to come back to.
Right. Yeah.
Eliminating that, just striking through it.
These other two, like the wetlands acreage, it's a little different now that I know it doesn't include the marsh. It's just
Yeah,
inland wetlands. It's a little less.
Yeah,
Okay.
even if it's freshwater wetlands, my bias is, you guys know, I'm conservative. Let's be very cautious about those calculations, and it just opens up a Pandora's box. It
No,
seems to me.
But it's good to think about. I mean, I want to
It does.
give a little more thought.
Yeah, it does.
Great. Good. Excellent. I appreciate the direction.
Thank you.
Last slide are the other items. Happy to bring this to you guys for presentations. We talked about the densities of stormwater, character defining features, which density is part of that. Fences, of course, is also, and we kind of get a little bit of nitty gritty with that, but there's also the sea level rise study. The town just completed, with the help of Seymour Whiteside and Associates, just completed 2 target areas. We do have it on our website under our Engineering Development Services website page. Is on the left side if you would like to take a look at it. It looks at Hadrill Street and also looks at a part of Darrell Creek up there. But it's very interesting, projecting out 25 years what's the expectation of some of the high tides we have. We're also going to be moving forward with a couple other new 3 other locations too that we're going to be studying for that. And lastly, the wetlands ordinance. This is something that was prompted by Mayor and Flood Resilience Committee. We've been discussing that with the Green Commission, and we have something very preliminary, but we've been given good direction yesterday, actually. So we'll be drafting up a wetland ordinance. We'll be happy to share that too, just as information only. because it will ultimately be coming through you as well for review too. So
are all those topics presentable next month, or do we want to do them in increments? Or
increments would be good because
Okay.
we can sit there and talk about it
yeah, that'd be fine.
instead of
Let's
like
do.
cramming all this stuff in.
Okay. Is
And-
there a preference on priority for the outstanding topics that Kevin outlined?
No, I mean, they're all interesting.
They are.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about sea level rise.
It is a very interesting. It's very detailed, and the guys we've hired are, they're experts in this sort of stuff. So I'll see if they're available. If they're not available, we could maybe
use your judgment.
punt
Let's just
to maybe
take it one
next
at a
month.
time.
Yeah, it's convenient and makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well,
Anything else for Kevin or for staff?
No, I think we just need to, no, not for Kevin, just to talk about dates for a possible special meeting for next month. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
That was really interesting.
All right. I believe the date would be November 17th. That'd be a Monday. Would be the only time that we have a room available, and it would be up to y'all if we could establish a quorum.
Yeah.
And did you want me to talk about
Yeah,
why?
I think if you would, you probably can summarize it better than I can.
So, we, as you saw tonight with the rezoning, although tonight's rezoning requested RC2, there's something in the code that we need to fix to make the density match what the county is going to be matching outside of the urban growth boundary. So the one that got final reading that Peter talked about finally at town council, where they denied the zoning, they denied the CC zoning, and so he automatically came in as RR. But right now, our RR is the same density as CC, so it's 3 units an acre. In that area in the county, it's the opposite. It's 1 per 3, but they're working on changing it to 1 per 1. So I think what I've had a council member ask that we place it on planning committee. That won't happen until November 3rd to discuss this. So it would be essentially changing the density of our rural residential district, changing it from 3 units per 1 acre to 1 unit per 1 acre. And that would match what the county is headed to approve. And so I think that and a small fix in the code where if you're outside of the urban growth boundary, the zoning that's applied to you is either going to be that RC or that RR. And so you'd be either 1 per 1 or 1 per 3 instead of 3 per 1. Mm-hmm. So it's really kind of a fix. But I think the intention was because our next meeting is December 11th, right? I think December 11th. So if we had a special meeting, if we were able to get a quorum for a special meeting, we could go ahead and send the ad off. The thing is, and it's a risk. So if we take it to planning committee, I'm making it sound very simple, and I think it should be. But if council wants to add something or change something, we're going to have to put out the public hearing ad before that occurs. So there's a chance that what we put out in the public hearing ad isn't right, and then we have to do it again. But if we make it work, I think the intent was to have a special meeting, hear that, and then it gets approved at council. It gets to go to council a month earlier,
right?
Just to kind of fix that density issue. So that's kind of they're really kind of simple, no-brainer fixes in my mind. But yeah.
I just like the whole notion of doing whatever we can to not create incentives or, by contrast, disincentives between the county versus the town.
Correct. Right.
You know, and that's where we've been for the last few years. At least in some narrow areas. Yeah.
At least it eliminates one impediment because there are others, but that helps.
Exactly. So I think the only available, and I think Peter was going to do a doodle just to confirm we get a quorum, but I think the only availability for the council chambers and to have a recording secretary would be Monday, November 17th.
Okay.
So be on the lookout, check your calendars, and if we can make it work, we'll do it.
Like
and
5 p.m. and it'll be just that one issue and be done.
So.
Thanks, Michelle.
So yeah, look for that email, and we'll try to move forward with that. Okay.
Great.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Mr. Bennett, are we adjourned?
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Michael Ramsey. Hey, I'm Michael Ramsey. I'm with Director of Government Relations for CTAR, working for Ryan. So I was 28 years with Berkeley County government as a mostly a commercial real estate appraiser, and then the last 6 years economic